Okay, that's everybody's name at that time. This was a date. And this was forget where it was. It was in Brooklyn, and her name is Susan. All my dates were Susans. Everybody was a Susan. And this was a Susan. This is not a pickup. This was a date, and she lived right by there, that area. And so we would go to the Rocks just to spend time there.
And then the ROTC.
The ROTC, yes.
Were you serious with any other women before Mom, or what?
No. In fact, I thought it was very stupid to all of a sudden, for instance, the guys on the block would get married. I didn't know why. Because I didn't see any kind of reason. Unless it was just because it was conventional. This was what you're supposed to do. You know, you're supposed to go and go with somebody. And you go to the movies, you find out about all this love affair and stuff like that. It's nonsense. I couldn't see any reality in it. So I thought it was just what you're supposed to do. As you grow up, this is what happens. You get out of high school, and then it's crisis, because either you're going to college or going to work, you know, some sort of job, career, or getting started with it. And then that's what you're supposed to do. If you want to have babies, it was inconceivable why, to me.
Yeah. And so this is all passing stuff. The girls,
yeah, you know, just you're supposed to go out. And I remember asking my brother, because my brother had several girlfriends. He was going steady with whatever, a series of them. And so I asked him, I says, okay, I've got a date with so-and-so. I don't know what the situation was. What do you talk to them about? You know, I said, what are you supposed to talk to them? I had a blind date, let's say. But I had no idea what the social routine was and what you're supposed to do with them.
Did he tell you?
He just said, well, here's what you do. You tell them, he told me, but it was basically try and behave like you would with somebody else. He was giving me that advice. And I thought it was very artificial, very strange. The ROTC pictures, that was another Susan, different Susan, but that was Susan. She's a good-looking girl. And she lived within a few blocks. So you had to go to a few blocks, walk there, and then I would pick her up. And I remember for the military ball, this was in, now it's City College, and just to put in perspective, what do you call it? General Clark, what's his name, the Secretary of State, you know, no, Powell was in a class behind me.
Really?
Yes, he was the ROTC class in City College, just the class behind me. But that was another era. I was interested in it. It was, you know, and I would consider, because at that time I was going to engineering school, and I didn't know really what you do as an engineer. So it was interesting. You got all dressed up and all spiffy and shine your shoes and go for these drills, and I was very good at that. Of course, I didn't like it when I actually had to serve time in the military, because I thought it was stupid. It was stupid people above you, you know. But I think it's a matter of endurance. You just stick it out, and you get promotions, and they give you more money, and it's you go for 20 years, and you retire, and they give you full pay, which I didn't know any better. I said, this is great, you know, get a career like this. But I also remember that being an engineer, or growing into learning how to be an engineer, anybody in the construction field or anybody that worked with machines that had a daughter that I was dating, I was immediately more romantic to her because I figured the father was going to set me up. And that was an interesting feeling of looking back at that. Anyway, I got my engineering job. Now I'm getting out of college. Okay. And I had a series of jobs. I worked first. My first job was in Long Island City, doing instrumentation on aircraft. And the reason I got that job was because of Mike Levine. If you remember, I don't know if you remember Mike Levine. Mike Levine married to Lorraine Levine, Lorraine Rosenberg. Rosenberg was a sister, well, her mother was a sister to my father. My father had I think he was the youngest of 5 kids, all girls. And each one of these girls got married, and they had their own established situation. For instance, Eva was a sister to Rose, who got married to Nat. Who was ultra religious, very orthodox, and they had, let's see, Marty and, let's see, I'm not saying their names, Shelley, the religion continued, very orthodox. Yeah, Nat was the son of, I can't remember his father's name, but his father had the actual beard and looked like the Hasidic. Shelley married Rabbi Berman, who was like a Hasidic. And Marty, of course, was extremely orthodox also, and you know, it just follows that kind of tradition.
Right. So you were in engineering school?
Engineering school, okay. And I was in love with, and I thought love at that time was because you got set up by whoever's father was in that kind of field and could set you up for that. And at that time, okay, I started in the Long Island City. Mike Levine is married to Lorraine Rosenberg, who was, also lived in Brooklyn. And Mike Levine was a very meticulous type guy, very detailed, very compulsive. And he said he got this job and he was doing very well at it. He says, they had its own openings. So I would go with him and got this job. There were layoffs during that time, and so from that job I went to other jobs. Ended up with a job in New Jersey for Curtiss-Wright Company, which made engines for aircraft, and also got into the paper industry where they made instruments that measured paper and for manufacturers of paper. And at that time, they were located around Princeton, New Jersey, and it was very difficult to live in Princeton, New Jersey, to find a place in Princeton, New Jersey. And so I bought my first house trailer. And the house trailer had everything you needed, and also was portable because Curtiss-Wright moved the setup, the location, the company that did the paper making machine stuff, to northern Jersey, and I was able to move that house trailer from one camp to another. And then I changed from that job to a job in Connecticut, which is United Technology Hamilton Standard, a division of them. And they were doing also measurement work for aircraft, and they got the first subcontract for the moon suit, which is something that was given to Grumman Aircraft, I think, in Long Island. And so they got the contract, the subcontract, to make the environmental suit in Hamilton Standard.
Right.
I was in a rut in the engineering work. I didn't like it because it was something you work at until you retired, and to do this kind of stuff until you retired, because I was probably late 20s at that time, I thought was a waste of time, a waste of a life. And so the job itself involved using some physiologists and using engineers and using people that work materials and things like that, all the details of trying to develop and manufacture a suit that is where it's in the backpack of an astronaut. And it was fascinating to realize that the people, the physiologists, couldn't understand us. We would try and get details from them on how to deal with the human person, you know, the physiology of it, and they couldn't talk in our language. And when we would give them information on materials and things like that, they couldn't understand us. On my left, and also there was desks that were located every 10 feet, front and back, probably in a football stadium type building. And so there were just rows and rows of desks to our sides and to the front and back. And so this was the type of setup that you can anticipate the rest of your time until you retire. And the type of work you would be doing it was just something that was very frustrating. So I was very frustrated in it. So I went to some of these summer stock shows, which was in Connecticut. And I used to go there as a thing to do because I was a bachelor at that time. And I'd look at the people on stage, and they were basically the people in the area that would be part of the production crew. And I figured, gee, that's not that difficult to do. And I'd look at that, and so I said, I can do that. I'm going to try out. Now, also, when I was younger, before my voice changed, I used to sing professionally for Abe Nadell, who had a choir. And the choir used to go to weddings and bar mitzvahs and high holidays. And so I was part of the alto group, the singers, and we would learn the Hebrew things you're supposed to say during weddings and high holidays, and go to rehearsals on the Lower East Side.
Right.
Okay. And that was a routine, and it was my first professional job, and I got $50 a year, which is a big deal. We had to sign a contract. I had to bring it home to my parents to sign, and so that's what I did. And I also used to play the musical instrument at the high school with a clarinet. There was a clarinet in the band, the dance band. I was not too good at it, but singing was good. It was fun. And so later in Connecticut, when I got these jobs, I also went for musicals. So it was a type of thing. I was in demand. My particular age and looks was such that they needed the young bachelor type. And so I was in 4 plays at once. And amongst those plays was also Gilbert and Sullivan stuff, light opera. And it was fun. And it was good diversion from being at work, which I didn't really care for. And in fact, part of these things are the reviews of that time. also during that time, because of the job itself and the rut I felt I was in, this fellow on my left was he was an electrical engineer. I was a mechanical engineer, and he was also in the same rut, and we would talk to each other. And I said, okay, what would happen if we went to medical school? You know, and then we could learn how to do this language thing where we could talk the same language as a physiologist, and we could talk the engineering, and then, you know, deal with, because at that time also they were talking about the science and medical people getting together and getting artificial kidneys and artificial hearts and all kinds of stuff like that, and these orthopedic devices that would make for artificial limbs. So anyway, what we did first to make sure we were not doing the wrong thing, because at that time also I went to a wedding, a family thing, where they realized that I was thinking this way, and Jack Rubin, who was the partner of my father, and he was also a brother to Eva. He was the younger brother. He sat down with me at the wedding, and he says, I heard this is what you're planning to do. Are you thinking about it? And I says, yeah. And he says to me, he says, you know, Jewish boys do not do this. You know, when you have a profession, you stick with a profession. There's something wrong for you to leave a profession and do something else. So it was interesting what his attitude was. Also, my brother talked to me about it, and he says, make sure you're not crazy. Make sure you're not doing something nuts. And he arranged for me to go see a psychologist, you know, just to make sure that my thoughts were okay. And so I did that, and the psychologist came back with the idea that you're not crazy, you know. So with that, I started applying to medical school. This other guy on my left, oh yeah, first of all, we went around, because we were discontented with the job, and we wanted to make sure that this was okay, you know, because there were people that were at this engineering job that were there for years. So what we did, divide up territory. He went to the left, I went to the right, and we started interviewing other engineers. And we would sit down with him and say, why are you here? And he did the same thing on the other end. And the consensus was that the reason they were there was because of the life. They were paid well, and they had families, and they were able to spend vacations and time with their families, and with a decent income, and they had the house, and they had everything was set up for them. And that was the thing that did it. It was, in other words, the family thing was the reason that they stayed on the job. You know, and it wasn't the job that made them happy. It was the lifestyle. So I says, you know, this wasn't for me. Anyway, with the showbiz, and finally I had a tough time getting into schools, because they didn't like somebody that came out of a work environment to go back to school. They normally have somebody that's pre-med that gets accepted and goes right into medical school.
Right.
It was something that they didn't, it was not normal for them. So I got rejected a lot by the typical MD schools. That's dipping down right now.
Yeah.
Okay. So during that time, also my brother was the detail person. He would go to offices, doctors' offices, and try and sell them on. Purdue Frederick was one of the pharmaceutical companies represented. And so he sort of advised me, and also trying to apply to these medical schools, I needed I needed the application filled up. I needed people to sponsor me or to give me letters of recommendation. So he would know the people to contact, and that's where I got it. So anyway, I got rejected by a lot of schools, And the only ones that were potentially there were overseas, or later I found out osteopathic schools. I didn't know what osteopaths were. So, but my brother detailed to osteopathic offices, so he says, why don't you meet somebody? And he arranged it, some of the osteopaths in Brooklyn, for me to talk to. And they wanted to meet me also if they were going to give letters of recommendation. So I found out basically that everything was the same. It's just that they learned manipulation a little bit, which I didn't know anything about. But they were more fixed on it. They enjoyed being osteopaths. Yeah. So it ended up, I applied to Philadelphia school, and I applied to Chicago school, and I applied to a Des Moines school, osteopathic. They all accepted it. It was not strange for them to accept somebody that was in a different field. In fact, they enjoyed it. And my sales thing for the MD schools, I said, hey, you've got research going on for kidney machines and heart machines and things like that. Here, I'm coming out of that experience. No. Neistat, Henry, okay, my brother now was serious, okay? And he was married, I think. And I don't know what age I was. I think I was probably still in engineering. I was in Connecticut. Yeah, he was married to Harriet. Harriet, his first wife. And Harriet and I were buddies. She was like a sister to me. Mm-hmm. Vibrant, singing, personality was unbelievable. And in fact, when I was in these shows, Harriet and my brother would come up to see him, and she would enjoy it, and my brother would just be, he would be proud. Okay, and that time I remember I had a girlfriend, and the girlfriend was in White Plains, which was north of the Bronx, and she would come up. It was a train. It was a train to come up there. I would meet her at the train station, and she would come to the shows and stuff like that. So that was part of it. And also, my brother was not interested in a lot of these things. But Harriet would want to go to see shows on New York, and so I would go with her. And so we had a very close relationship. Anyway, when I got into medical school, is that what you want to hear about? Or
well, I just remember
more dates or more.
Well, no, because you used to tell stories and joking stories about the girls you used to go out with, and your adventures with Neistat.
Okay, yeah.
I figured by the time we get into medical school, we're getting into the mom.
No, we're not. This is part of it. This is with Harriet came Arnold. Arnold's his brother, Harriet. Okay. And Arnold was very good with women, and I was not too good. Socially, I was still backward. So Arnold, while he was able to date, he would date a lot of women, a lot of girls, and everybody was attracted to Arnold. He was good looking. So I would go along with it, even though I was older than him. But we somehow ended up going out double dates and things like that. And in fact, when I see Arnold now, which is of course 50 years later or whatever it is, we talk about the same girls. And I remember the name Barbara Sidorsky, and he remembers the name. I don't remember what the name was, but we would joke about it now, saying, "Hey, do you think she's still around?" Try and find out where Barbara is. And
right.
Anyway, with Henry was my brother's friend primarily, and during my time in college, they always had this what's called a house plan society. House plan was like a not fraternity, and just a bunch of guys that got together, and there was a house plan for girls, and there was a house plan for guys, and there was a group of them, And socially, they would get together, let's say, on Friday night or Saturday night or whatever it was. And one houseplant would date the other houseplant. And I remember he was pretty good with women also, and I was, like standing on the side. I remember another story was, I can't remember his name now, but he was fairly successful later. He wrote a book and stuff like that on investing. And the both of us, he was like not that attractive, and I was not that social. So we would stand on the side while everybody was dancing to records. And we would nudge each other, and he'd say to me, he says, how come a nice Jewish boy like you is not married? And that sort of stuff. And we would sort of joke back and forth that he was the same situation. And, Anyway, with Henry, it was also double dating a lot. And at that time, part of the double dates was he would immediately say, when things were quiet, he'd say, we'd pull shticks. It was like joking back and forth, and it was almost like a routine. And he'd say, Marvin, with the girls there, sing. And so I'd start singing. And the singing usually was a long type of something that was on Broadway. And it was a routine. And he still jokes about that. In fact, his daughters now, with a grown-up family, says, Marvin, sing something. So it started. It was funny.
Right. Although, you were talking about the shticks and the...
Yeah, there was a lot of that. There was, and the singing, and and multiple dates. There was, sometimes we would have several dates in one day. But
what era was this? How old were you?
This is in college now.
Okay.
Yeah, the house plan thing was Brooklyn College. Brooklyn College was before City College for me. He was learning civil engineering, I think, and so it was during school. And house plans was an era. It was an interesting time. And then there were dynamics in his family, of course, and but he was basically my brother's friend. And but for social, because my brother got married now to Harriet, and so now I would be the one to go with him. Okay, so we used to go out to Fire Island, and usually they rented a house in Fire Island on the beach, and there was a big social thing where a bunch of women and a bunch of guys would have parties. But that was it. A series of dates, everything. And then he met his wife in Fire Island area, and they started going out. Anyway, I go to medical school, and still very quiet guy, me. The first thing that happened that made me more well, I was older than everybody else, okay? So when I found a place to live, which was in the fraternity house, it was a Jewish fraternity house, and so immediately I became the, what do you call it, house mother, okay? You collect the rents and you worry about the details of everybody's problems, and but we're fairly close in this group, because everybody's studying and everybody's worried and everybody, that's it. But as a Jewish fraternity, we kept us together. But still, socially, I was not that good. And I had I think I had I don't remember if I had Volkswagen at that time. Anyway, I would go see Harriet on weekends or whatever it was, and my brother. It was a long trip from Philadelphia to go out to Long Island, Smithtown. And she would be taking care of me also. She would be buying meats, packaging for me separately, so that I could take it back so I would have some food. You know.
Still living in the trailer at this point?
No. They didn't. I couldn't have a trailer in Philadelphia, you know, and I couldn't be close enough to the school. So it ends up I'm living in the fraternity house.
Okay.
Now the trailer from Connecticut we had to get rid of because there was no place to put it. From Connecticut I'm going to Philadelphia, so it was out of the way. So it ends up we sold it, and my brother was involved at that time trying to figure out what to do with it. Anyway, so I started there in 19. Wait a minute.
Medical school?
Okay, no. First, okay, 1962 is when I decide I'm getting out of this engineering thing and I'm going back to school. Before I go back to school, I had to take another year of language and I think biochemistry in order to qualify. The language was German because I figured with my broken Yiddish I'd be able to be a head start on that. Didn't matter. It wasn't as good at it. But anyway, it got by that. Biochemistry I did well. And I don't know why, because that was a killer. Biochemistry is a killer all medical students. They would go through school, pre-medical school, get to that course, and that would make them drop out and go to something like that. But I did well on that, and well enough that I was able to get a scholarship. They paid some sort of stipend out of New York State because I was able to do well on that course. So that's 62 to 63, 64, I was finally going into the school. And some studying and having a tough time, going up to see my brothers